So, you've heard the name Huawei, right? I mean, it's pretty much always in the headlines. But what if I told you that behind all the politics and the 5G tech, there's a story you probably don't know? This isn't just about a tech company, it's a raw story of survival. We're going to pull back the curtain on the man whose personal struggle became the blueprint for one of the world's most powerful and, yeah, most controversial companies. Okay, first things first, let's just wrap our heads around how massive this company really is. Look at this. Huawei's annual revenue isn't just in the same league as other Chinese tech giants, it's bigger than Alibaba and Tencent combined. We are talking about an absolute behemoth here.
And right there, that's the central puzzle of Huawei, isn't it? On the one hand, they are the biggest telecom equipment provider on the entire planet. But on the other hand, they are at the very center of huge global security debates. To really understand how they got here, we have to go all the way back to the beginning.
You know, in China, people often talk about two legendary tech founders. You've got Jack Ma of Alibaba, who's known as the man of passion, but then you have Huawei's founder, Ren Zhengfei, and he's known as something totally different, the man of hardship. And to get Huawei's DNA, you have to understand that hardship.
This one quote from Ren, it just says it all. His story doesn't start in a garage with some big, world-changing idea. Nope, it starts with hunger. He was born back in 1944 in this poor village tucked away in rural China. He was the oldest of 7 kids, and even though his parents were teachers, they were so poor that just finding enough food to eat was a constant daily battle. So right from the get-go, his world wasn't about ambition, it was about survival. And yet, in the middle of all that poverty, his father gave him this one piece of advice that would change everything. He told Ren that education, that knowledge, was the only way out. Ren took that to heart. He studied like his life depended on it, because, well, it kind of did. But, even with all that studying, life was about to take a turn. A really, really bad turn. What came next wasn't some steady climb to success. It was just one crushing blow after another. So you gotta understand the backdrop here. We're talking about China's Cultural Revolution, a period people literally describe as a time of madness. Intellectuals, like his father, were being targeted. Society was just thrown into total chaos. And for Ren, this wasn't just some abstract political event. It was a personal avalanche. First, his father gets thrown in prison. Then, he's laid off from his job in the army. He finally gets a new job, only to get scammed out of a massive amount of money. We're talking 2 million yuan. And bam, he's fired. And just when you think it can't get any worse, his wife divorces him. By his 40s, he had absolutely nothing. No job, no money, and a family he still had to support. He had hit rock bottom. So, what do you do when you have absolutely nothing left to lose? For Ren Zhengfei, the answer was to start a company, not because of some grand vision, but out of pure, raw desperation. And he said it himself. There was no other way. Think about that. The original mission of what would become one of the biggest tech companies in the world was just to find a way to eat. So he and 5 partners scraped together everything they had, which came out to just 20,000 yuan. I mean, a tiny amount of money even back then. They called it Huawei. At first, they were selling anything they could, diet pills, you name it, just to make a living. Eventually, they started selling telephone exchanges, which China desperately needed. But there was a problem. They had to buy them through this middleman in Hong Kong who was charging them so much that there was no profit left. So, faced with another dead end, Ren made a call, a decision that would define the entire future of the company. If we can't afford to buy it, we're going to build it ourselves. And that one decision right there, born out of just trying to stay afloat, is what set Huawei on this unbelievable path, from a desperate little venture in a cramped apartment to the global empire it is today. And the journey from there is just wild. In 1991, Huawei's research lab was a single apartment. It was also the factory, the cafeteria, and the dorm for 50 people who had to sleep in shifts. Ren's office, a mattress on the floor. Now, fast forward to today, a research campus the size of 28 Tokyo domes with actual European-style castles and its own train line. I mean, that contrast tells you everything you need to know. So how on earth did they do it? With a strategy that's famously called surrounding the cities from the countryside. Basically, they didn't go head-to-head with the big players in the cities. Instead, they went to all the rural areas that their competitors ignored. They offered way lower prices, and once they proved their stuff was reliable, they built trust. And only then did they start moving into the big cities. Pretty clever. And that decision from way back when to just build their own technology became the company's superpower. To this day, Huawei pours a massive amount of its money back into R&D. And this relentless focus is only possible because of how the company is structured, which lets them think long-term instead of just quarter to quarter.
See, it's a private, limited liability company, not a publicly traded one. And what that really means is that Ren Zhengfei still has a huge amount of control. He can make these massive long-term bets on research and development without having to worry about a quarterly earnings call with anxious shareholders. It's a structure built for endurance.
So when you look at the whole story, from a childhood of never having enough to eat to the brink of total ruin as an adult, Ren Zhengfei's entire life has been about survival. You could argue that that very instinct is coded into the DNA of Huawei itself. Which brings us to a final thought. Does knowing the story of the man, the story of incredible hardship, change how you see the global company and all the controversies that surround it today?